When Elias Crowe made the offer, he did not look at her the way men usually did when they spoke of marriage. There was no hunger in his dark eyes, no nervous excitement, no hopeful spark, only exhaustion, calculation, and something else buried so deep it barely flickered anymore: grief. The winter wind howled through the bare cottonwoods outside the ranch house, rattling the porch boards beneath their feet, while snow rolled across the plains in pale curtains. Clara Whitfield stood with her coat pulled tight around her thin shoulders, leather suitcase resting beside her boots, wondering if she had misheard him. "A practical arrangement," he repeated, voice low and steady, as if proposing the purchase of cattle rather than a union between two strangers. "You'd have shelter, food, protection. My name. I'd have a wife. Someone to run the house. Appear respectable. No expectations beyond that." Clara blinked at him, breath misting in the frozen air. She had come to the Crowe Ranch answering a newspaper advertisement for a housekeeper, not expecting to be asked to marry a man whose face looked carved from stone and shadow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his coat worn but clean, his jaw rough with stubble. A scar curved faintly along his temple, disappearing into dark hair streaked prematurely with gray. The kind of man life had not treated gently. "Why me?" she asked quietly. Elias hesitated just long enough for the truth to show. "Because you're alone," he said. "And so am I." The words were blunt, but not cruel. They landed between them like something fragile. Clara had been alone since the fever took her parents 2 winters ago, leaving her with debts she couldn't pay and a farm that froze before spring. She sold what little she could, packed her life into one battered case, and followed opportunity westward until it ran out at this lonely spread of land. The Crowe Ranch was enormous but strangely silent, barns standing like sleeping giants beneath the snow, smoke curling from a single chimney in the main house. No children's laughter. No woman's footprints in the drifts. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "I could be terrible." Elias's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "I doubt that." He gestured toward the porch. "Come inside. You're freezing." The house smelled of wood smoke and coffee, neat but bare, like someone had learned how to keep it running without learning how to make it warm. One chair at the table. One place set. The walls were decorated with landscapes instead of portraits, as if people were too painful to display. He poured her coffee without asking how she took it, then slid sugar across when he noticed her hesitation. "You can think about it," he said. "I'm not asking for an answer today." Clara wrapped her hands around the mug, feeling heat seep into her fingers. "Why do you need a wife at all?" Elias stared into his own cup, eyes darkening. "Because a man alone with this much land attracts attention. Banks. Distant relatives. Folks who think widowers are weak." Widower. The word hummed in the air. "You loved her," Clara said before she could stop herself. His jaw tightened. "Yes." One word. Final. Silence stretched. Snow ticked against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked far too loudly. "And you don't want to love anyone else," she said. Elias looked up sharply, then away. "That's not part of the arrangement." But Clara saw it then, the hollow space behind his ribs, the thing he was guarding with practicality and contracts. He wasn't offering marriage because he believed in it. He was offering it because he no longer did. That night, lying in the small guest room beneath quilts that smelled faintly of cedar, Clara stared at the ceiling while wind moaned around the eaves. She thought about hunger, about cold nights on the road, about the way Elias had sat alone like it weighed 100 pounds. She thought about the scar on his temple, the empty chair at his table, the way grief had hardened into something permanent. By morning, frost clung to the windows in delicate patterns. Elias was already outside feeding horses when she stepped onto the porch, breath sharp in her lungs. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "I'll do it," she said. He froze. You didn't let me finish, she added. There will be rules. Respect. Separate rooms unless we both say otherwise. And I won't be invisible in my own home. Elias studied her for a long moment, wind tugging at his coat. Agreed. He extended his hand. It was rough, warm despite the cold. When she placed her smaller one in it, something subtle passed between them, an awareness, a question neither was ready to voice. They married 2 weeks later in the tiny town church with only the preacher and a pair of curious witnesses. No kiss lingered longer than politeness required. No promises beyond signatures and shared obligations. But when Clara walked back out into the snow on Elias's arm, ring heavy on her finger, she wondered why her heart was racing as if she had done something far more dangerous than she meant to. Marriage did not soften Elias overnight. He remained quiet, distant, polite in a way that kept her always one step outside the walls he had built around himself. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch quickly, how to keep the stove fed, how to organize supplies, how to coax warmth into a house that had forgotten what laughter sounded like. She hummed while she worked. She baked bread even when no one asked for it. She opened curtains that had stayed closed for years. Elias noticed everything and said almost nothing. Until one evening, months into winter, when she placed a plate of stew in front of him and he stopped, spoon hovering. My wife used to add time, he murmured. Clara's chest tightened. Do you want me to stop? He shook his head slowly. No. I just noticed. It was the first time he had spoken her into the same sentence as the woman who came before. From then on, pieces of him began to surface in the quiet, stories of storms survived, of land fought for, of a girl with laughing eyes who used to ride fences beside him. He spoke of her rarely, but when he did, it wasn't with stone anymore. It was with something bruised. The change crept in so subtly Elias almost didn't recognize it. He started lingering at the table after meals. Asking how her day had been. Bringing her apples from town without explanation. Once, when she slipped on ice near the barn, he caught her before she hit the ground, hands gripping her arms too tightly, eyes wild with something close to fear. They stayed that way for a second too long. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. Be careful, he muttered. Spring came slowly, turning snow into mud and fields into promise. Clara planted flowers near the porch, bright, stubborn things that defied the gray. Elias pretended not to care. Then she caught him watching them one morning, sunlight on his face like he'd forgotten what color looked like. Trouble arrived the way it always did, unannounced. A banker rode in with papers and thin smiles, talking about debts Elias didn't want to discuss, about acreage that could be reclaimed. Clara listened from the doorway while Elias's shoulders tightened, pride bristling. After the man left, she placed a hand on her husband's arm. We'll figure it out, she said. Elias stiffened. This isn't your problem. She met his eyes steadily. I'm your wife. That makes it mine. Something shifted in him then, surprise, followed by something warmer, more dangerous. The night the storm hit, it came hard and fast, thunder splitting the sky, rain turning to sleet. Elias was late returning from checking the south fence. Clara paced the floor until finally grabbing a lantern and heading out into the chaos. She found him thrown from his horse, trapped beneath a fallen branch, blood streaking his temple. Panic clawed her throat, but she forced herself calm, dragging the branch free with shaking arms, hauling him onto the saddle and guiding the horse home through sheets of ice. Inside, she cleaned his wound, hands gentle, voice steady. Elias watched her through half-lidded eyes. You didn't have to come, he whispered. Clara swallowed. Yes, she said. I did. Fever took him that night, burning through his skin, dragging old nightmares to the surface. He called another woman's name. He begged for forgiveness for things Clara didn't understand. She stayed anyway, cooling his forehead, holding his hand while rain battered the roof. When morning came, he woke to sunlight and her asleep in a chair beside the bed, fingers still curled around his. Elias stared at her like he was seeing something impossible. When she woke, embarrassed, trying to pull away, he didn't let go. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. "Not for the rescue. For staying." Weeks later, when he finally spoke again of his first wife, it wasn't in fragments. It was the whole story: illness, helplessness, the way love had turned into loss overnight. "I thought that part of me died with her," he admitted quietly. Clara listened without interrupting, tears shining in her eyes. "It didn't," she said. "It just went quiet." Elias looked at her then the way men looked at women when something sacred was happening and they were afraid to move. "You make this place feel alive again," he whispered. "You make me feel alive again." The words scared him. He tried to take them back. Clara didn't let him. She didn't kiss him. She didn't rush him. She simply rested her forehead against his and breathed. And somehow, that was more intimate than anything else. Summer arrived green and loud, fields thick with promise, laughter echoing in spaces that had once been empty. Elias found himself smiling without realizing it. Found himself watching Clara when she wasn't looking. Found himself wanting. One evening on the porch, fireflies blinking in the dusk, he finally spoke the truth he'd been avoiding. "This was supposed to be simple," he said. "It isn't anymore." Clara's voice was soft. "Good." He turned to her fully. "I didn't think I could love again." Her heart hammered, but she held his gaze. "And now?" Elias reached for her hand, not as part of a deal, not as duty, but as a man stepping off a cliff. "Now I think you gave me something I thought I'd lost forever." She squeezed his fingers. "What's that?" He smiled, slow and real. "Hope." When he kissed her this time, it wasn't polite. It wasn't careful. It was grateful and fierce and full of tomorrow.